All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 11, chapter 10 of our 810 class. So I'm going to actually just go ahead and jump right on into the topics for today because I actually recorded the following slides before I recorded my intro. And so I know that today is a little bit longer of a presentation. And so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on in. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. You already have your discussion topic. It's already been posted in Canvas, so you should have no issues with getting that done. Otherwise, have a great week, and you'll now see me presenting on motivation. Okay, so this week we're going to be discussing motivation, and this is actually a pretty interesting topic. I mean, especially if you work in a high school, because motivation, especially at the high school age, at least in the experience that I had when I was working in the schools, is it tends to be pretty difficult. And so this was all information that, I think that it's pretty important for future teachers to know or current teachers to know. And I think that it's really important that if you are, especially a high school teacher, this might be a topic that you would be interested in maybe digging a little deeper than sort of what we're going to discuss today, because of the fact that today, this is motivating high schoolers to graduate from high school can tend to be sometimes difficult. And so we'll discuss that here in a little bit. I don't want to get too off base. But essentially, what is motivation when we're looking at sort of the textbook definition of motivation? It is the process through which goal-directed activity is instigated and sustained. And essentially, all that means is that if I am motivated to do something, then I am more likely to achieve a goal, right? And so there are two ways of sort of motivating it. There's extrinsic and there's intrinsic. So an example of intrinsic right now for me actually would be I have this is kind of silly, but I have never learned to roller skate. If you are an individual that is, that is older and has never learned to roller skate, it can be one of those kind of funny little things that you see like 5-year-old kids doing and they do it very well. And here I am like a tree about to fall over. But yesterday my wife mentioned that our kids would want skates eventually at some point. And so this random little comment kind of instigated me to go out and buy some rollerblades. And so yesterday I was actually on our front porch, or on our driveway, actually, not our front porch, would be very dangerous, but our driveway, for going up and down the driveway, because I've never learned roller skate, and so there is an intrinsic motivator for me to essentially be able to roller skate with my kids one day, whenever they're old enough to do that, right? Because whenever I was a kid, I actually, I never learned to roller skate. My parents never taught me. There's some stories behind that, but that's not relevant for today. But ultimately, my goal is to be able to roller skate with my kids one day, and go to the roller rink one day when my kids are old enough, and to get to ride around with them, even if it's very, very slow, even if I'm holding onto the wall. I want to be able to, be out there with them, so that I'm intrinsically motivated to achieve that goal, right? No, there is no extrinsic motivator out there. I guess one could argue that the action of sort of the perceived expectation of my children could be an extrinsic motivator, but ultimately I am, for reality's sake, it is very likely that my kids would never notice a difference if I did or did not roller skate. But there is some level in me, some motivator in me that makes me want to be able to go to the roller rink with them and to roller skate with them and to essentially do whatever they do. And then the opposite would be extrinsic motivation, where if you are work is usually a pretty good example. So if you are working a job that you don't necessarily like, there is. So whenever I was in college, I worked at Walmart, and that was an awful, awful job. So if you are ever at Walmart and you see somebody working in the deli area, They are, it is a very difficult job, and not necessarily difficult, but just in the sense of like, it's hard to learn, but just, constantly cooking food, constantly giving out food, constantly cutting meat, constantly doing all this, constantly cleaning, constantly just move, 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 move. And it was, just for me, it was a very thankless job. Think, not think, less job. And so it was very boring for me, which all those factors leads to a very low motivation level, but I needed money, right? I was a college student. I had rent to pay. Um, I needed to pay my bills. Um, and so they were the highest paying job in Commerce, Texas at the time. So I went for that job and got it, and honestly, I was happy to have it. I didn't necessarily like the job, but I was happy to be making some money, doing whatever ultimately. So um, yeah, so that is work is an example of an extrinsic motivator. Okay, so if you are essentially, if you're ever in a position where there is some outside force that is trying to increase your motivation level, then that is us extrinsically being motivated extrinsically, or us motivating somebody extrinsically, right? And so, um, it's really important that we understand how to motivate somebody intrinsically, because we'll discuss this here in a little bit, but oftentimes in the schools we tend to motivate individuals extrinsically, and all the research out there has shown that intrinsic motivation is more likely to achieve results, right? So we are more likely to reach our goal if we are intrinsically motivated versus extrinsically motivated. And so ways that we can intrinsically motivate, we like challenge, right? Human beings like to be challenged. We like to have some level, we like to be able to show some level of effort and reach a final goal, right? And so it's important as we are setting expectations, as we are establishing frameworks for classrooms, as we are establishing assignments and whatnot, that we are establishing some level of challenge that kind of pushes students, that kind of makes them want to do well, and makes them want to achieve. Okay, and then giving students autonomy. And so this can be really difficult, especially in our schools today, where our classrooms are, they seem like they're ever increasing. But we'd also use technology to sort of incorporate technology into this factor, but giving students some level of ownership over their assignments, over the work that they do, right? And so in this class is online class, there is some hope that you will use the research, so the research assignments that I give, as a means of providing yourself some level of autonomy. I've had feedback from students saying that they see this assignment as useless, and you know what, that is absolutely fine. If you want to be a graduate student or an undergrad and have no knowledge of research, that is up to you. But my goal or my hope is that that'll provide some level of autonomy. So if I remember whenever I was in grad school, we were going through academic assessment classes, and reading for school psychologists is the most common research area, right? So if you go to any school psychology program in the country, you're going to find 90% of individuals are working in the area of reading. I obviously I'm using a very large number there, but it ultimately, you go to these programs and it's going to be a very large percentage of the professors that are doing research in the area of reading. I know that in my program, of the 4 professors that were associated with UCR, that I'm trying to avoid hearing my daughter cry. But ultimately, the 4 professors that you are going that I ran into when I was at UCR, 3 of them did reading, 3 of them studied reading, and 1 of them studied mental health. And then whenever I left, we hired a new one. A few people left, and we hired a new one, and he studied behavior. But ultimately, most people, most people in school psychology study reading. There's a ton of research on reading, and reading honestly bored me to death. All this work on reading and reading assessments and reading screeners and reading interventions, it was incredibly boring to me, if I'm just being perfectly honest. And so there were, we were on a quarter system, so there were about 8 or 9 weeks where I was just bored to tears with this information, which maybe it wasn't, was a sign that this whole school psychology thing wasn't going to work, but I had faith, right? So, but ultimately, there was 1 week where they discussed math, and that was the week that just was so exciting for me. It was so interesting to me, and so that was when I realized that I'm interested in the area of math. And right now, I am studying suicide, and that is something that is intrinsically motivating for me because I have I have a personal history, not my own life, but I have personal history of friends and family committing suicide, and that is something that I would my brain is very analytical, and so in a lot of ways, researching and analyzing and objectifying and sort of defining the problem can help sort of with intrinsic motivation for me with coping. So, and then arouse curiosity. So, a lot of ways we can do this is by showing our own level of motivation, showing our own excitement about this topic, and giving students enough information that they want to learn more, right? So if this particular topic, if motivation is something that interests you, then my hope is that you would watch this video and you would have some level of interest, and then you would, if this is a topic of particular interest for you, you would go out and seek more information, right? And because we don't want to create individuals in the schools that just accept what we tell them and move on, right? We want students to take in the information, learn it, process it, store it, and then think, how can I learn more? We want them to be active learners, okay? And then you can also raise interest through fantasy. So this was one for me whenever I was in, maybe I'm dating myself a little bit for anybody that is older or younger than me. I was in elementary school whenever Harry Potter came out, and I remember actually 5th grade was when I read the first Harry Potter book, and before that, I hated reading. I'm still to this day, I'm a very, very slow reader. I would, if we are working sort of within our RTI framework, I would absolutely be labeled as somebody with a reading deficit because I'm very, very slow. I'm an incredibly slow reader. Comprehension is incredibly high, but reading fluency, if you will, is very low because I'm a very slow reader. And so I've always avoided reading, but there have been a few books that have really interested me in reading and in doing that kind of stuff. And so Harry Potter was the first one, really, and then The Girl with Dragon Tattoo was a very interesting series for me. And so, but ultimately, these are ways to sort of provide some level of fantasy that can pique the interest of an individual. Okay, so if you are a science teacher, then you can show sort of the smallest particles of our body, and maybe raise fantasy through that, because it seems, if you look at just the subatomic particles in our body and in the world today, it just seems very it does seem like it's fantasy, right? It's so hard to sort of comprehend these different particles. Or if you're a history teacher, you can try to raise some interest through looking at the world explorations of our the world explorers of the 1400s. Right, so there are these different ways to intrinsically motivate individuals, and I've been on this topic for a little while, so I'm trying to move on. And flow is essentially flow is whenever we are sort of so engrossed in a topic that we are, that we lose track of time, that we lose sort of our sense of how much time we spend on something because we are so interested in the topic, right? So for me, I've been doing a lot of writing over the last few weeks, and this has been something that I've been motivated to do for a little while, so I'm finally getting to do it. And so in a lot of ways, and my wife unfortunately would absolutely vouch for this, I have got on my laptop and started writing, and I do sometimes lose track of time. I will put the kids to bed at around 7 o'clock, get out of the room around 7:15 or 7:30, and then I will be on my laptop writing, and it won't be until I notice that she's getting up and going to bed at like midnight that I realize I need to put my laptop away. So essentially, flow is whenever we are so interested in a topic that we just can't help but continue to be focused on it, to write on it. And so autonomy, expertise, and optimal challenge are, sort of in the example that I just gave, sort of autonomy. I have thanks to working for the university that I do. One of the reasons I love this university as much as I do is they give me the autonomy to kind of do what I want as far as research is concerned, and I get to study something that I'm interested in, that I have a high level of expertise in. I have a lot of knowledge related to suicide, and I have the autonomy to get to do that. I'm not being told. So whenever I was an undergrad, I had a professor, a supervisor at one point, that he was telling me that in order for cognitive psychology, there's this one conference that is very, very prestigious to get into, and you have to have so many years of research in this one particular area. And I mean, we're talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years of research in this one area, several publications, several data points showing that you are an expert in this field above all others, and then you are accepted into this really prestigious conference that he was dying to get into. And the difficult part with that is, if we're talking about 5 or 6, 7 or 8 years of work being done in this particular topic, it can be kind of hard to maintain motivation toward one particular topic for the next who knows how many years, right? So, and again, one of the reasons that I like being at Pittsburgh State is that today I'm really interested in suicide. And for the foreseeable future, I'm very, very interested in suicide. I have some collaborations going on with different professors at different universities that is also motivating me to be interested in this area. But in 10 years, 15 years, if this is a topic that is no longer interesting to me for whatever reason, then I have the power, I have the autonomy to do that, to change my area of interest. And then optimal challenge, I really want to get published as much as possible. I enjoy being published. I enjoy having articles that have my name on them, if I'm being perfectly honest. That is a particular motivator for me, and that is a challenge, right? It is a challenge to get published. It is not always the easiest thing to do. So that is flow. Motivation to learn. Ultimately, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if we are working with teenagers with 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, then it can be really difficult to motivate them, right? So we in the schools have established a system that really emphasizes extrinsic motivation, right? And if you read more in the book, or if you read more in the literature, the large majority of the research out there does support the fact that motivation, when it is extrinsic, is less effective than motivation when it is intrinsic. But we in the schools have established an extrinsic motivation type system where we require attendance, and students don't always understand why we require them to attend. And so one of the things that I always try to emphasize with attendance, because I do require attendance in my in-person classes whenever I had those. And one of the things I'm always emphasize is that I view this as a job. I view school as a job. It is one that, your paycheck is your grades, right? And that can seem really cheesy, really stupid, whatever you want to say about it, but ultimately that is the case, right? So we get paid through this our transcripts have grades on that. That is our paycheck. And obviously it doesn't necessarily put money in the bank today, but the goal is that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the amount of money that I get put in my paycheck, put in my bank account, will be higher than if I did not have those grades. If I did not have that paycheck coming from Pittsburgh State University, or Liberty Hill High School, which is where I went to high school at. So I think that it's very important that we understand that fact, and that we are being certain that we are doing our best to understand and to help students understand why attendance is important. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of times the reason that we want students to attend at such a high level in the high schools, or in the schools in general, is because states tend to fund schools based on how their attendance looks, right? And so it doesn't take long before students figure out that really the reason that I am here, the reason that you want me here in this history class that I have zero interest in, that bores me to tears, that I think is so stupid, is because it gets you more money. Well, I don't care about that. And if I'm, 15, 16-year-old kid, I don't care about how much money you're getting as a school, even though I should, I don't. And so screw you for making me attend attend this class that I don't have any interest in. And then that creates a framework of sort of this distrust and this lack of care on the part of a student, right? And then we put them in classes where they don't really have a whole lot of choice. So, in every state has these requirements of what it takes for you to graduate from high school, right? You need 4 years of English, you need 2 years of math, you need a PE class, you need 2 years of science. And honestly, colleges aren't really any different with our Guerrilla Gateways programs, where we require to take English 199 and math 350, math 113 or something like that. And we require you to take these different classes in order for you to graduate. And the reason behind that has always been that we want to make you a more well-rounded student. But ultimately, the difficult part is that as we are entering into sort of an age of college is more expensive, and your ability to get a job, your ability to get a job right now is tenuous at best, no matter what your degree level is. But it is one of those things that before this crisis, we were having a situation where individuals with a high school diploma were, the quality of the job that you're going to get with a high school diploma was, not great at all. And then if you look at people with a bachelor's degree, they're not in a whole lot better position, right? So you have these situations where, we used to, in the 50s and the 40s, and many decades ago, not many, but several decades ago, we were able to motivate you by saying if you complete this degree program, this diploma, then you can go out and get a good job and take care of your family and do those things that you can do, and those are becoming less and less true today, right? And so at that point, it becomes harder for us to sort of motivate individuals to, and that is where you hear the term, the phrase, I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to need this. This is pointless. This is stupid. Um, and the difficult part is that giving autonomy in the schools, whenever you are dealing with 30 10th grade or 10th graders, is going to be very, very difficult for a few reasons. One of which is you don't just have 30 students, right? You have 150 students. If you have 6 periods of classes or 7 periods of classes, and you have, average of 20 students per class, you're dealing with over 100 students. And so you have to be able to provide some level of autonomy for every one of these students, and then also doing some level of oversight, right? So it's going to be impossible for you to watch over 140 students, trying to find 140 different topics. Now, one thing that you can do is to use like a group-based project where you are dividing groups, you're dividing that 140 students into smaller groups, and then you base the group and you go out and you task the group with finding a topic that is relevant to them. And so that's an option that you can do. But just being clever about how we get students to have some level of autonomy, right? And then, technology is a huge benefit for us, right? So technology is one of those aspects that can really help individualize all these things, okay? So, and the really cool part is that you see these different programs that are being proposed online, even though I see a lot of flaws and risks with these programs. You see these programs and they are designed to help increase motivation. They are designed to help increase the level of autonomy that a student might have with their class. So it is very, very important that we are utilizing whatever resources that we have at our disposal, because student autonomy is becoming more and more important today in the high schools and the colleges, and that's why you see so many schools, so many states moving toward a CTE model, a career tech ed model, where you have more schools that are offering auto tech classes or cooking classes, or these different classes that are designed to get you some kind of certificate whenever you leave the school. So I see that this one might be a long slideshow. I'm gonna try and at about 40 to 45 to 50 minutes. But my rate so far is we have 20 slides and I'm talking a lot today, so I'll do my best. Ultimately, so the behaviorist view model of motivation is very much extrinsic, and we reinforcing is an extrinsic motivator, right? So, and motivators, obviously motivation through positive reinforcement is very possible, very doable, but the difficult part there is that it's not necessarily as stable as intrinsic motivation. What I mean by stable is, so whenever I was working in elementary schools, or whenever I was an intervention teacher for elementary school level age students, you would have a particular motivator to get a reinforcer to get students motivated, right? It'd be stickers, candy, whatever it might be. And this week, I'm a third grade kid, and I really love Despicable Me stickers. Okay, I really want Despicable Me stickers and nothing else. Perfect. Here's some Despicable Me stickers. Let's reinforce the hell out of this. Okay, well, this week I really want. I'm feeling Iron Man today, and I really want Iron Man stickers. And like, the kid's not trying to screw. I'm not trying to screw with you as a professional or anything. But now you have 2 different weeks where now I want 2 different kinds of stickers. I'm tired of Despicable Me stickers. My notebook has all the Despicable Me stickers that I could ever want, and now I want some Iron Man stickers. And so I remember when, being an intervention teacher, it was always such a pain, like, because you try and follow the trajectory and the logic of a second or third grader, and it will absolutely make your head spin. And so then you're trying to predict what they're going to want, and and there can be sort of a lag, right? So if in the situation I was in, because this actually really did unfortunately happen to me, I had a student that loved Despicable Me stickers until he didn't, and then he went. I don't think it was Iron Man. I'll never forget Despicable Me. I will never remember what he wanted after that, because I blacked it out. But he really wanted a different kind of sticker. And so we had to go online and find these different kind of stickers, right? So um, it is one of those things that if the reinforcers that we have out there are reinforcing to a student, fantastic. If not, there can be a little bit of a lag between what we have and what the student wants, right? And then the other issue is if you give candy. There's like a famous economist out there that he always talks about the limitations of positive reinforcement, because they learned whenever he was trying to decide if my son is screaming or crying. I can't decide. Anyway, um, so he learned whenever he was trying to potty train his daughter, and she loved Skittles until she didn't. And so he would just reinforce any time that she was using the potty with some Skittles, and then at some point it became less reinforcing to her to have Skittles. Um, and so that is the difficult part. So behavioral reinforcers can do a lot of good as far as increasing motivation, but we need to make sure that our motivators are motivating. So that's one of the criticisms. Okay. All right, so the cognitive view of motivation is ultimately looking back at the fact that um, our students, our brains want to learn, right? Our brains are sort of hardwired to be interested in learning. And as we are processing new information, we are more likely to process information and sort of divide it into different schemas or different categories, and then we tend to instinctively think about next steps, or what are the implications of X, Y, and Z, and how can I learn more, right? So our brains tend to do that. And then social cognition theory is really focused on, and one of the things that they look at is the power of motivation, or the power of modeling motivation, right? So I am a professor of education, and education is something that I absolutely love. I love working in the schools. I love working with students. This is genuinely something that I truly do love doing. And I try to model that as much as possible. Sometimes I might go a little overboard, which is very doable for me. But this is something that I absolutely love working with, and I want others to experience that joy that I have working in the schools, because working in the schools, while it is the most exhausting, I shouldn't say most exhausting right now, because there are people out there that are working in the health profession that are way more exhausted than educators are, unfortunately. But it can be very exhausting work, and it can be work that is really, really underappreciated, and in society, in the media, whatever it might be. If any of you need some evidence, just always think about the old saying that you may or may not hear in your lifetime. What is it? Those that can do, those that can't teach. There's an interesting little speech out there, or I come back to that really went viral whenever I was in college, about sort of that saying. But ultimately, we don't necessarily, appreciate education as much as possible, but I still love this job, and I still think that this job has a lot of benefit. Honestly, if you need a little extrinsic motivator to understand that, there's no better time than right now. Whenever a lot of people are losing their jobs, we have a lot of educators that are fortunately still able to teach online. So it's a pretty good profession to be in as far as that is concerned. And so, but yeah, ultimately, we back to the point at hand here. So social cognitive theory is looking at my modeling of excitement and how that can help you as a student become more intrinsically motivated or more motivated to want to learn more about education, hopefully. And this is where the expertise part comes into play, right? So this is actually a perfect example for me, a perfect time for me to give this example, because I picked up a fourth class in, I guess, January, February, and it was a social psychology class. And so I'm currently teaching a class in social psychology, which for me was an area of interest whenever I was an undergrad, and has not been an area of interest since. And so, I find this stuff interesting, but it is not an area that I have any expertise in whatsoever. And so for me, like, it is very easy for me to talk right now, like for me to have this discussion, even though I'm talking to a computer, or talking to you sort of virtually. This is very easy for me. I enjoy discussing sort of how all these different factors impact education and how they can help us become better educators. But social psychology, like, these poor students are dealing with me, and I'm doing my best. I don't think I'm doing a bad job, but my level of interest is, the motivation that I'm showing is is significantly decreased versus this right here. All right, so the video that I'll be recording for them in a little while will, I hope, will be a very interesting topic. I hope to have given them interesting topics to discuss to try and motivate them, but ultimately my own modeling of enjoyment, of interest, of expertise has been decreased. So that is where, so as we are modeling our love or our enjoyment for a particular topic, it is important for us to really show how we are experts in a particular area. Okay. All right. So we are on slide 8 of 20, and I'm at 37 minutes. Sociocultural view of learning or motivation is essentially we are all learners, right? This is a community of learners. We are all sort of in this together. And students work as cooperative units to try and learn information. And so this is really looking at if you are doing like group work, or if you are trying to encourage large groups of students to be engaged in a topic together, then this is really what you're looking at. And the important thing to remember in this one, and I'll move on from this, is whenever we are trying to motivate individuals, it's important that we focus on the zone of proximal development. And zone of proximal development essentially refers to teaching information that is within the grasp of individuals, right? So we as educated individuals, college educated, sometimes graduate level educated, we know a lot. And it can be very, very easy for us to talk over our students, to to sort of send information, to sail it over their head. And that will not increase motivation whatsoever. So it's important for us to make sure that we are sort of building these students up and giving them sort of stepping stones to more and more complicated tasks and more complicated information, right? All right. So, but you also don't want to make it too simple. So you want to sort of, if the student baseline is here, you want to provide a little stepping stone, a little stepping stone, a little stepping stone, a little stepping stone. If baseline is here and it goes down here, they're going to view that the work that is done for this particular topic as pointless, as useless, as less interesting, or as less valuable. Then the humanistic view of motivation this is where you see the unconditional positive regard come into play, and ultimately that is just our understanding of helping the students understand that we really regard them as individuals, we regard them as human beings, that they are important to us, they are important to the school, that they are more than just a dollars and cents unit from that comes from the state of Kansas or the state of whatever the state you might move to after this, or hopefully nobody leaves the state of Kansas because I love it here. But ultimately is this perspective that we need to make sure that our students are valued. And if you are one of those individuals that thinks that is absolutely ridiculous, how these young generations and wanting to be valued, I mean, we all want to be valued, right? Nobody wants to feel like the work that they are doing or that the people around them don't value them, right? And that is, I can't imagine a time period in life or a generation in our society that has not wanted to be valued, right? So I have had individuals in the past that have sort of found that to be kind of an abrasive thought, is this unconditional positive regard. But ultimately, just remember, we're all doing our best, and we all want to be liked. We all want to be valued. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna discuss Maslow. Maslow here is everybody's probably pretty familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and essentially what the important point to consider here is just the impact of our needs on our motivation, right? So if I am hungry, so I knew this morning that I needed to get these videos done, I needed to record these videos for my classes, but you wake up, you have needs that need to be met, right? I have to feed my son, I have to feed my daughter, I have to feed myself, and if I'm not taking care of my own personal needs, then I am going to be, if I hadn't eaten this morning, then I would be probably more of a wreck than I already am on any given day, and I would be, my ability to convey any information to you would be diminished, right? Because whenever our basic needs are not met, then we are less able to do really anything. And so the reason that this is important is oftentimes in the schools we're working with students that have varying levels of sort of financial ability, financial security, and so in that situation you might be placed in a situation where, like whenever I was working at Compton, every school I worked in, everybody was on free and reduced lunch, and they had such an issue with students coming to school hungry and not eating before school, and and they were having such a tough time getting students to show up on time to school, on time enough to be in the cafeteria before school, that they actually just instituted a sort of first period is there's like a 15-minute chunk during your first period where you are eating breakfast, where we bring breakfast to your classrooms. You are, I as a teacher, I am talking, I am teaching, and I am also watching 20 kindergartners eating their whatever sandwich or whatever food there might be. And so it's one of those things that if we don't feel safe, if we don't feel fit, if we are hungry, if we don't have our needs met, then we're going to be less motivated to learn anything. Okay? Self-determination theory. There are three components within. That's what I'm crying. Thankfully, my wife's out there with him. There are three components within self-determination theory: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And this is as we are determining what the value of a particular topic or of a particular set of information is, related to us. We're going to look at how competent we are with a particular topic, with a particular area of interest, and then we're going to look at how much power we have within determining that, sort of what we're learning, and then we're also going to evaluate how related a particular bit of information is to us. And so these are all sort of the factors that we are consciously or unconsciously evaluating as we are determining whether or not a particular piece of information is relevant to us or is interesting to us. It's going to motivate us, okay? All right, so diversity. Obviously, there's a lot of differences that diversity can play in this, and you have to make sure that you are aware of that whenever you're in the schools. Every classroom is different. You know, there are gender differences, there are racial differences, there are all these different cultural differences that you're going to need to be aware of whenever you're working in the schools, and it's going to be important for you to understand different cultures' comfort levels when it comes to autonomy. Right, so you could be teaching to a particular set of students that their culture teaches them that you are the teacher, and as the teacher, you are the expert. You tell me what to do. I don't tell you what I want to do. You tell me what to do, and I will do that. And they could, there is the possibility that individuals that have that kind of mindset could view you as you giving them more power, more autonomy, as maybe insulting, or maybe it's something that they might look toward you and think a little bit lesser of your quality of teaching, whatever it might be. So just understand that the impact of diversity whenever you're working with your classrooms. And then self-worth. So this is the point of self-worth is ultimately going back to the importance of giving students sort of challenges up, trying to challenge them to increase their learning. And if we view the instruction that we're getting, or if we view the material that we're learning or the assignments that we're being given as sort of lesser than us, then that could decrease motivation, because we view, sure, I accomplished X on this particular paper, but that paper was so easy and it was so stupid, it was so pointless, that really that will actually that challenges my own view of my own self-worth. And so I am now less motivated in your class because you have given me this paper. So that's something you always want to avoid, right? So applying this in your classroom, they're all right there. We don't need, you can easily just pause versus me reading these and going any longer, because I'm sitting at 47 minutes right now. So expectations. So we tend to sort of evaluate all situations within this framework of expectations by value. And so if my expectations of my ability to achieve something is very low, then I'm less likely to want to be motivated to do it. If the amount of value that I will get from exhibiting some particular behavior is also low, then I'm less likely to be motivated to do it. So an example would be, honestly, extra credit for classrooms, or just assignments for classrooms. Right? So I've had students who were openly and very honest about the fact that, like, okay, so you're going to give me X number of points for doing this paper. Yeah, that's not worth it. You're going to give me X number of points for doing this. I already have an A, that's not worth it. But if that equation becomes significantly different if you have an F in my class, and every 10, 15, 20 points makes a huge difference can make a huge difference in your grade and whether or not you pass this class, then you are more likely to sort of work that equation a little bit differently, right? Because so if you have an A, if you're sitting in a solid 95% in the classroom, and I say, well, here's this extra credit assignment, it'll get you 15, 20 extra bonus points, you're going to think, well, sure, I can achieve whatever level of success is expected by Dr. Lloyd on this particular topic, on this particular assignment, but the value of the reward is very low, because I don't need it. I don't need that. But if you were sitting at an F, again, if you were sitting at a 68 or 58% in my class, then the value of 20 points becomes a whole lot more important, becomes a whole lot more valuable than if you're sitting at 95%. So it's just important that we consider that as we are setting expectations for students. And the mindset of beliefs about intelligence. So it's important that we really help our students understand that they can learn anything, right? So there's been this view on the part of certain teachers that cognition, that intelligence does not improve, that our learning does not necessarily improve. We might learn new skills, but it doesn't necessarily make us smarter individuals. Ultimately, research has found that if you have that mindset, you are actually going to be less motivating for your students than if you really encourage your students to learn as much as they can and really encourage them that they can learn whatever it is that you're teaching. And so just making sure that they understand that their intelligence as they move through the school year can grow. That'll help motivate them. And then our own beliefs about our capability. So we need, if I as a student do not believe that I'm capable of achieving a certain goal, then I am less likely to strive for that goal. And then cause of performance, right? So it is important that we, as individuals, even so for you, for me, for my kids, for our students, for whoever it might be, it's important for us to understand that what we are doing and what we are, the actions that we are, the goals that we have are directly linked to our own actions, right? So they're not necessarily linked to our ability, our intelligence. And the reason that's important is because if I fail and I think that my failure makes me stupid, then I'm less likely to be motivated in the future, as opposed to if I were to fail and understand fully that yeah, sure, I failed, but it's because I didn't put enough effort into this. Or yes, I failed, but if I put more effort into it, then I can succeed. So it's understanding that that effort can improve outcomes. And then performance goals. So I'm sitting at 51 minutes, so I'm gonna jump over this slide, but this is kind of interesting to discuss. So there it is for you, but I don't want to take too much of your time. And then increasing interest and positive emotions is very has been hammered probably quite a bit in this lecture, and just making sure that we are doing our best to motivate our students. Do your best to motivate your students. That is ultimately the most important part here. And so it is important for us that we are trying to motivate our students as much as possible. And that is it for this week. You already have your discussion topic for the week, so you don't necessarily need to have watched this video for the discussion topic. Hopefully you all watch the video for the sake of class anyways. But otherwise, if you have any questions, concerns, complaints, whatever it might be, email me, let me know. Reach out if you want to have a Zoom conference, whatever it might be, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all next week. All right, have a good day.